you could remain standing, our colleague, conseiller Jean Cloutier, will introduce our guests who are going to sing our national anthem.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, colleagues. Three Good Looking Guys is a nonprofit barbershop quartet of senior gentlemen in their 70s and 80s, created solely to entertain seniors groups in and around Ottawa. The group believes that singing and serving in this way provides benefits to our community by contributing to the continuing health and well-being of seniors. Three Good Looking Guys se dévouent en chanson et en service pour le bénéfice de notre...
Sing and serve for the community and contribute to the well-being of seniors.
Guys has performed at Good Companion Senior Centre, Old Forge Community Resource Centre, Beth Donovan Hospice in Kempville, High Horizons Luncheons for physically challenged adults, Orchard View Living in Greeley, Westwood Retirement Home, St. Paul's Anglican Senior Afternoon Program, and so much more. Regarding the unusual name, the quartet gave serious consideration to appropriate descriptive names such as Not Quite Over the Hill Quartet and Three Stents and a Bypass, but finally agreed on Three Good Looking Guys by a democratic vote of 3-1. I introduce Brian McGurran, Jerry Allen, Rod McGilvray, and Bruce Thompson, Three Good Looking Guys.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command, cantum brasse porte payer, isse porte la croix. Histoire to l'épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Well, that was great. Thank you very much. Three good-looking guys. And the fourth guy. It's a pleasure to welcome the Carleton Ravens men's curling team up to the center of the council chamber. Gentlemen, if you join us. These gentlemen are the 2019 Curling Canada University champions from right here in Ottawa. Congratulations. I'd like to introduce Cameron Goodkey, the skip, Mackenzie Caldwell III, Morgan Caldwell II, Brendan Acorn the lead, Wesley Stakes the alternate, and Coach Tom Sinclair. And I'd ask Councillor Sean Menard, who's representing Carleton University, and Mathieu Fleury, our sports commissioner, to join us for the presentation. Earlier this morning, we had an opportunity to host a breakfast for the curling champions, and a number of members of council were there as we highlighted the accomplishments in Fredericton not too long ago. It was a decisive 10-4 win over the Memorial University Seahawks and Carleton's first ever national men's curling title. My congratulations to the team, and it's an honor today, if I can have the proclamation from Heather, to proclaim today Carleton University Ravens Men's Curling Team Day in the City of Ottawa. We're very, very proud of you. Thank you for the tremendous work. And I'll just read the proclamation. Whereas Carleton University has over 29,000 students, faculty, and staff, and over 140,000 alumni worldwide who are part of the Ravens community and share this success. Whereas on February 18th, 2019, Carleton University Ravens men's curling team won the Ontario University Athletics Provincial Championships title, their program's first provincial title. And whereas on March 19th, 2019, the Carleton University Ravens men's curling team won the U Sport National national championship title, their program's first national title. And whereas Tom Sinclair was named the OUA Coach of the Year, whereas Mackenzie Caldwell was named U Sport #1 Team All-Canadian All-Star, and whereas Malcolm Caldwell, Mackenzie's brother, and Cameron Goodkey were named U Sport's second team All-Canadian All-Stars, whereas Cameron Goodkey was named the OUA and U Sports Player of the Week. Par conséquent, je Jim Watson, maire de la ville d'Ottawa.
So be it resolved that I declare the April 10th, 2018, the Carleton University Ravens Men Curling Club Day.
Proclaim April 10th, 2019 as Carleton University Ravens Men's Curling Team Day in Ottawa. Congratulations, gentlemen. Come on up over here. We'll get Squeeze.
Then we can squeeze. We're done, guys. Well, you and I are.
I know. You're going to say congratulations. You're in charge of the wine. Congratulations.
Thanks for everybody that's here to congratulate us. Thanks for the proclamation. That's really nice. It's nice to get recognition from the city for a great accomplishment. I'd like to thank all these guys that helped us get there, our coach, Tom Sinclair, and all of our players as well. And thanks for everyone to be here.
Thanks so much. Good to see you. Good to see you guys.
So we switched it a little bit around because they have to go, a couple of the gentlemen have exams. So we won't be offended if you sneak out. It's now my honor to present the Mayor's City Builder Award to Sister Lorena Morris, if she would come forward at this point. Welcome, Sister Lorena. And I know you have family and friends with you here today, and it's great to see them here with you. And welcome, and we'll ask Councillor Riley Brockington, your ward councillor, to come and join us as well. Je suis ravi d'accueillir le conseiller de quartier.
It's an honor to invite the councillor for the River Ward to join us for this prize, this award.
The Caldwell Family Centre and the neighborhood who are here today. The center began as just 3 caring nuns from the Sacred Heart of Jesus who began handing out food and clothes to people in need in the neighborhood. It was 1979 when Sisters Thelma Marion, Medlin Rochon, and Lorena Morris opened their hearts and their home to the community. Within a couple of years, they were running a food bank and a hamper program, and also teaching cooking classes. The sisters added a drop-in center and created classrooms to teach English to an influx of refugees from Vietnam and Cambodia. They hired and nurtured capable staff, they raised awareness of needs in the community, and they raised funds for programs and activities for the neighborhood. Sister Lorena became the executive director of the center in 1998 and maintained the spirit of operations, a place of security, respect, inclusion, and support. She continued to be a strong figure and mentor in the community and thrived with each opportunity she had to help others. Sister Lorena provided people with the support and encouragement that allowed them to find work, raise families, and build productive lives in the community. She made an enormous contribution to our Ottawa community through her generosity, caring, and positive feedback. Sister Lorena makes a wonderful difference in our community. It's my honor to acknowledge her contributions with a City Builder Award. J'ai l'honneur de souligner ses contributions.
It's an honor to acknowledge her contribution with a City Builder Award.
Occasion pour remercier Sœur Lorena pour ses nombreuses contributions à la communauté et à toute la ville. I'd like to take this opportunity, Sister Lorena, to thank you very, very much for the great work. I see it any time I'm in Caldwell. You're just such a beacon of hope and positive energy, and you've done so much, and this is the least we can do to say thank you for a job very, very well done. Congratulations. Come on up, we'll just take a little picture here. We'll leave those. Come in the middle here, and we'll just move up here a little bit.
What can I say? This is amazing. Thank you, Mayor Watson, Councillor Riley, and all of you who have gathered here to celebrate. That is amazing. My 40 years in the Caldwell and Carlington area were the best years of my life. Here I found strong people who wanted to better their lives and needed only to learn how to connect with the many services that we have. The Caldwell Family Center, established, as Mr. Watson said, by Sister Thelma, was a positive answer to the needs of that day. But for today, my wish for today is that these services continue and help the local people, and it drives me to say that this special day is a God-blessing one, because I really think that if we follow the motto that we have of for the people and with the people, our world will proceed and be much better. Thank you for this amazing time, and I appreciate all the beauty and everything that has come said. I try to live that out. God bless you all. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you again, Sister Lorena. Roll call, please, Madam Deputy Clerk.
Councillor Luloff.
Si.
Councillor Dudas.
Present.
Councillor Harder.
Here.
Councillor Suds.
Here.
Councillor El Shantiri.
Present.
Councillor Gower.
Here.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Present.
Councillor Shirelli.
Here.
Councillor Eglai. Councillor Deans.
Here.
Councillor Tierney.
Present.
Councillor Fleury.
Ici.
Councillor McKinney.
Present.
Councillor Leeper.
Present.
Councillor Brockington. Councillor Menard.
Here.
Councillor Cloutier.
Present.
Councillor Blais.
Here.
Councillor Drews.
Here.
Councillor Moffat.
Here.
Councillor Meehan.
Here.
Councillor Hubley.
Here.
Mayor Watson.
Si.
Le quorum est étient, Monsieur le maire.
Merci. Confirmation of minutes, adoption de procès verbaux pour le 27 mars 2019. Carried. Declaration of interest, including those originally from prior meetings. Councillor Harder, please.
Yeah. I, Councillor Jan Harder, declare a potential deemed indirect pecuniary interest on the following report, item 3 on City Council 8, Agenda 11, even though I'm a non-voting member of the board. 2009 budgets and special levies for business improvement areas and Spark Street Mall Authority, as my daughter is executive director of the BBIA.
Thank you. Any other conflicts of interest? The communications as presented. Regrets, Councillor Eglai has advised he'll be absent from the council meeting of April 10th, 2019. Motion to introduce reports. Motion portant présentation de rapport. Conseil McKinney et Sud, s'il vous plaît.
That Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee Report 3, Finance and Economic Development Committee Report 3, Planning Committee Report 4, Transportation Committee Report 2, and the report from the City Clerk and Solicitor entitled Summary of Oral and Written Public Submissions for Items Subject to the Planning Act, Explanation Requirements at the City Council meeting of March 27, 2019 be received and considered.
On the motion, carried. First item, committee reports. Rapport des comités, Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee Report number 3, Settlement of Appeals to the Official Plan Amendment 150, Natural Heritage System Schedule. Carried. Item 2, FEDCO, Report number 3, Rapport numéro 3, Comité des finances de développement économique, Rapport sur le plan de partenariat de Spark Lansdowne. Carried. Item 3, 2019 budget and special levies for business improvement areas in Spark Street Mall Authority. Councillor Harder has left the table. Councillor Suds and El Shantiri have a technical amendment. Councillor Suds, if you'd like to introduce that, please, at this time.
Sure. Whereas after consideration of this report by the Finance and Economic Development Committee on April 2nd, 2019, it was noted that the document 1, Summary of BIA and Mall Authority Budgets, required an amendment to correct the following section. Canada North BIA sources of financing amount should be broken down as follows. The 2019 proposed levy of $451,500, less $5,000 for vacancy rebates, and less $20,000 for remissions, for a total of $426,500. Therefore, be it resolved that document 1 in the report from Finance and Economic Development Committee be replaced with the revised document 1 attached to this motion.
Okay, on the motion, carried. On the report as amended, carried. Item number 4, Interdepartmental Task Force on Affordable Housing near transit stations. Groupe de travail mixte sur les logements abordables près des stations de transport en commune. Councillor Fleury, is it a long issue, or can we go through?
It's 2 seconds.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Merci, Mr. Mayor. I want to applaud the work of the working group. I think it's very important for council to have that strategic investment and strategic discussion relating to the opportunities that we have along future developments of transit stations and the lands that we own. So I want to applaud the work. I also want to share how important it is to do to leverage our non-for-profit housing providers, but also to look to our private investors in development and seeing how we can maximize mixed income communities, employment nodes near our future transit stations. So I really think that having this exercise is useful, and now it's really going into how do we implement and how do we structure these lands to maximize its value, maximize the affordable opportunity from a non-for-profit sector and also from a private sector investment. So really great work from the team.
Councillor, should we go on to consent, or are you okay with a small item here? Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Just very quickly, I just also want to applaud staff for what you've come back with. I think that the speed in which you've returned to us with the amount of work that went into this to understand the opportunities for development for affordable housing in and around our transit stations is commendable. I think that we have an opportunity now as a city to ensure that we, can take real concrete steps forward in building affordable housing. As Councillor Fleury pointed out, partnering with both our nonprofit but also private developers to ensure that we house people affordably, where they can also move around the city and get to work, get to school, and do the things that they need to do in the most affordable way. So I look forward to hearing back future from Housing Now. I guess it's been turned over there, but I did want to take the opportunity to thank you.
Great, thank you both. On the report as presented, carried. Report number 4, rapport numéro 4, Comité de l'Urbanisme, zoning amendment 3930 and 3960 Riverside Drive. Councillor Harder and Tierney have a amendment. Councillor Hardy, do you want to introduce that now, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this is subsequent to the meeting that we had at the last Planning Committee, where we had tabled the motion, but we knew it needed extra information, and so this provides the extra information, and we did not vote on it at committee. And I've had conversations with Councillor Brockington since that as well. So the key part of it is to do with a southbound right turn lane extension on Riverside Drive between the new signalized entrance and Hunt Club Road be considered as a priority project to be funded from the development charge account. So that's the difference, is that we're making sure that it will be funded from the development charge account, as this is a key intersection in our network modifications list that is failing, and this will improve it. So out of that entire project, we agree that it is to be funded out of development charges.
This was shared with Councillor Brockington. Is this a longer discussion? Can we go on? Okay, so we'll come back to this item. So the amendment has been tabled, and we'll come back to that item at the end. Next is zoning bylaw amendment 5331 Fernbank Road, modification au règlement de zonage 5331 chemin Fernbank. Councillor Harder and Hubley have a technical amendment. Councillor Harder, please.
And it is just that there's an error in the property line in the location map, so this is replacing the location map in document 1 with the attached location map.
Okay, on the technical amendment by Councillors Harder and Hubley, carried. On the report as amended, carried. Item number 7, zoning bylaw amendment 429 McLaren Street, modification au règlement de zonage 429 rue McLaren. Councillor Harder and McKenney have a technical amendment. It's the day for technical amendments today. Councillor Harder, go ahead.
This has to do with document 2, where it's missing a provision in the details under number 2, so therefore be it resolved that council add an additional subletter to number 2, letter C, with, in column 5, or Roman numerals V, add the following text. The uses listed in column 3 are limited to a building that existed as of the date of the passing of this bylaw.
Okay, on the technical amendment by Councillor Harder and McKenney, carried. On the report as amended, carried. Item 8, exemption to permanent signs on private property bylaw, mural at 13 O'Meara Avenue, carried. And I think staff are working on a more permanent solution that I asked that they work on. Appreciate that. Transportation Committee report number 2, park and cycle study and pilot project, carried. Item 10, enhancements to the temporary traffic calming measures program, carried. Item 11, area traffic management ATM program update, ATM process update and traffic calming design guidelines, mise à jour du programme de gestion de la circulation locale, carried. Thank you to staff. Item 12, road activity bylaw phase 1 amendments, carried. Item 13, delegation of authority to enter into bike sharing agreements, délégation de pouvoir pour la conclusion d'entente de vélo partage, carried. Item 14, installation of bike racks at bus stops, installation de support à vélo aux arrêts d'autobus, carried. Does anyone wish to remove anything from the bulk consent agenda?
Question to staff, yes.
Which item, Councillor?
The 2019 tax ratio. 2018 tax ratio.
Which number is that?
B.
B.
That's the same one I have.
Sorry, I'm just trying to. Okay. Oh, is it item D, Councillor McKenney?
No, I want D.
You want D?
Yeah.
And Councillor Fleury, what do you want?
The policy, tax policies.
Yeah.
B.
D.
Well, you both want D then.
Yeah.
Okay.
D is in duo.
All right.
Do it.
Okay, so go ahead, Councillor Fleury, on D.
So I want to go back to our colleagues who is no longer around the table. Councillor Nussbaum last year had brought some attention to the parking lot and vacant land ratio. And I just want to hear from our finance team relating to what is legislated, because I'm confused. Last year we got caught up on the goals of council, but I really want to, can you reaffirm to us what is legislated in terms of the percentage, and why are we proposing, like I'm not seeing an increase in the percentage, and I think there's clear direction as to the goals of council. We had removed the vacancy rebate, and I'm not understanding why we're not increasing that ratio more significantly, but maybe you can just give us the legislative context there.
No, it's all right. It's on. Go ahead.
I believe you have the mic. Yeah.
You got it.
Thank you. What's legislated through legislation and regulation related to vacant lands and parking lots is a requirement for municipalities to apply a 30% reduction to that class. So regardless of what we do with that, If we were to collapse it and move it into the overall broad commercial class, that discount must be applied to those properties.
So just to clarify, we decide on the commercial ratio, but then of that ratio, we require a 30% reduction for both of those categories?
That's correct. So even if they moved into the commercial broad class, what we would see there, we actually did a very deep dive in terms of preparing our tax policy report this year, is if those properties moved into that class, the overall broad commercial class ratio would drop, which would benefit the large parking lots that are actually attached to commercial buildings, which is not the intent in terms of the direction that we were given by council last year in terms of the review that we were to do. And what would happen to the rest of the folks who sit in that standalone subclass for vacant land and parking lots, and particularly parking lots, there are a number of properties there. There's approximately 1,300, and a very large majority of those are small kind of business condo owners who own parking spots for their properties. They would see a 47% increase in their taxes if we move them into the commercial broad class.
And just finally, so have we signified this issue to the province in the past? Just could you remind if council has signified that gap to council? Because to me, it's odd that we don't have the specific. I understand the historical context, but for us, why wouldn't we decide on that policy piece?
So we're running under direction from legislation and regulation from the province. We have one of the most complex tax systems in Ontario in terms of adoption of all the subclasses, and we are using all of the tools available to us that are set by the province.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, on that basis, I wonder if that's something that we can look at, asking the province specifically to gain that authority, because, you know, I can understand why in the past there might have been this, but I really think that there's tons of opportunity, especially we were having that conversation relating to LRT, relating to some of the development. We all want to see some of those vacant lands and parking lots redeveloped. So is that something that we can ask of you to signify to the province or our Treasury?
Well, I think what you should do is probably, raise it at the appropriate committee, namely FEDCO. If you want to bring forward a suggestion, you can write to me as chair of FEDCO.
Sure,
and
will do. Thank you, Mr.
Councillor McKenney, please. This item D.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My questioning is along the same lines as Councillor Fleury. So we've had the discussion, and I understand that, with the parking lots and vacant land, to reduce that would reduce the overall commercial broad class. And of those 1,300 lots, I think that you told me there were 29 that were commercial paid parking. That's correct? That's the correct number. And do you know of those which ones are large lots? Like, I'm not talking about, an office building with 4 or 5 spots, but say 20 plus that we see in the downtown that have been there for decades. They're not being developed. They make far too much money. They make more money sitting there as parking lots. We actually are seeing them added. We had one added on Louisa not long ago that is actually benefiting Airbnb in the downtown. So I just wonder, with those parking lots, how many are large commercial paid parking and how many of those would be, say, over 20 spots?
In terms of the composition of the properties in that class, I think it's important to put into perspective the number that sit there versus the number of properties that we service across Ottawa. So we service approximately 329,000 property tax accounts, and when we look at drilling down into those large lots that sit within that bucket, we're talking at probably 20 or slightly less than 20.
Okay, well, I mean, I think that we need to do something. The fact that, these large parking lots pay less, lower tax ratio than multi-residential is concerning. It's unfair, and it's bizarre. I think that I would like to direct staff to at least, and I don't want to decrease that and then have the consequence of, increasing taxes by 48% on, 1,300 lots. That's not what I'm looking for. Or even reducing the whole commercial broad class. But I would like to direct staff to investigate, with the province, a change in the parking lots and vacant land property class, to perhaps establishing a subcategory for parking lots, say, with 20-plus spots.
I think, Councillor, it's similar to what I suggested with Councillor Fleury. If you write to me, and I'll put it on the agenda of future FEDCO meeting, and staff can take the direction at that point. That would probably be the most sensible route.
Okay,
you could write that out for us.
I can do that. Thank you.
You don't have to write it out now. You can write to me at any time after the meeting, before the next FEDCO or the one after that.
Yeah. No, I'm not writing it now.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else want to raise or take an item off the bulk consent agenda? No. On the bulk consent agenda as presented? Carried. So we're back now at item number 5, zoning bylaw amendment 3930 and 3960 Riverside Drive. Councillors Harder and Tierney have brought forward a motion, technical amendment, and Councillor Brockington, I believe, would like to speak to this because it's an important issue in his ward.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good morning to everyone. Indeed, it's a 20-acre piece of land at the corner of Riverside and Hunt Club, and we had a thorough discussion of this application at the Planning Committee last week. It's been a parcel of land that's been advertised for development for a couple of decades. There's been a sign that's been up so long it's been faded at Hunt Club, but the community has been aware that there were ultimately plans to build something here, and really the focus of my community's concern isn't exclusively on what is to be developed. Yes, I won't say there's unanimous agreement to what's being proposed, but really the focus and attention with this application has been on the transportation network, the significant challenges that exist now and will be compounded when this development is approved. We heard, and it was confirmed, that the intersection, Hunt Club Riverside, is an F-. It is sort of the worst grading that an intersection can have. It shuttles a significant volume of traffic through it every day, and we see, particularly on Hunt Club and Riverside at rush hours, the gridlock that exists, not 90 minutes, not 2 hours, but several hours a day, which is mainly people going to the west and to the south of Hunt Club. So like I said, the concerns in my community have basically been on the transportation network. So I have a few questions for staff. The official plan Section 4.3 states that the city, when reviewing development applications, will assess the adequacy of the transportation network to meet the needs of the proposed development. Individual building sites, subdivisions, and plans for large areas must be easy to get to, travel through on foot, by bicycle and transit, and by automobile. So given that the intersection is an F- and we have gridlock here, we've had gridlock for some time, and there's no short-term solutions to deal with capacity, can staff just describe how they assess the transportation network and challenges when reviewing a planning application?
Mr. Mayor, staff, as the councillor alluded to, there is a planning framework in place in terms of the official plan and transportation master plan. Some of the infrastructure projects within that time horizon of 2031 have yet to be implemented. So certainly there will be improvements in terms of stage 2 LRT, airport parkway widening, and others. In terms of reviewing the development application, the application is assessed on safe egress and ingress to the site. Certainly that's the case here. There'll be a new signalized controlled intersection to service the future development. There'll be a number of other enhancements in terms of an additional right turn lane. That was the subject of the motion that was tabled earlier. Also, pedestrian, cycling, and multi-use pathway connections will also certainly improve the existing situation.
So when traffic is backed up on Riverside all the way to Hogsback Road or even Heron on some bad days in the winter, does staff believe when our official plan says easy to get to that that's being met in this case?
Mr. Mayor, there will certainly be challenges in terms of peak hour movements that this intersection faces. However, there will be safe opportunities to access and egress the site through the controlled intersection. It's also important to remember that the current zoning amendment that's before council is actually creating an opportunity for a mix of uses and a significant reduction in potential trips than the current as-of-right zoning grants.
But the reality is there's nothing built there now, and so whatever gets built will be an increase. So when we compare it to what could happen with the current zoning, I don't think that's a fair comparison, because what we have now is gridlock, and whatever will get built will only contribute to that. There's been some flip-flopping on who pays for infrastructure, and that's sort of the genesis behind the motion that we have here today. Is there a clear policy that our staff follow when they're assessing whether the developer pays for some infrastructure improvements or whether that goes to the city?
Mr. Mayor, I'll begin the answer, and Ms. Sneddon may add to it. The Planning Act and the Development Charges Act set the policy. So the Planning Act allows us to attribute costs directly attributable to the development itself to the developer through approvals under the Planning Act. The Development Charges Act, however, enables the city to raise money through development charges for overall network level improvements. So what the discussion was on this file is whether the specific improvements, and we had things that fell into both buckets, some elements that were directly attributable to the development being assigned directly to developer, and the right turn lane extension of it, which is a network level improvement to move the flow related to growth, is a development charges. So the provincial legislation sets the policy for us.
So can you clarify what the proponent will be paying as far as infrastructure improvements?
Mr. Mayor, the development charges will be paying for the turn lane. The developer will be paying for the intersection, and that as Mr. Herwire explained in terms of the access and egress.
But the multi-use pathway, sidewalk.
They will be paying for the sidewalk works. Multi-use pathway will be the city.
That's been confirmed? The MUP?
That is correct.
Okay. There are, of course, capacity and safety issues with this, and I'm certainly looking going forward how we can make improvements here, because the status quo is not acceptable to me. There's a pilot project, the Adaptive Traffic Control Project, that's, I believe, on Innes Road that staff are looking at that could be expanded to the Hunt Club Riverside intersection. Could staff just educate council what this pilot is and whether this could be replicated at this intersection?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The councillor has spoken to us, and we certainly agree with his concerns on this intersection. So the AI traffic flow management system it uses artificial intelligence and loops detectors to adjust signal timing on the fly. So I've spoken to Mr. Landry, and with respect to this intersection, which many of us know is challenged in many, many ways, we will do some preliminary work in 2019 and then fully implemented in 2020. That should help in that regard. And we have some other suggestions if you want to hear about them also today that could assist. And it's all outside of the approvals and associated with the development, so it wouldn't get tied up in that.
And with respect to safety, I mean, it's well documented the number of collisions that occur at this intersection. Of course, the volume significantly contributes to this, but pedestrians don't feel safe crossing here, where, you know, the Quintera Riverwood community is pretty close to the TNT Mall. People should be walking. It's not safe to do so. It's certainly not safe to ride one's bike. Are there specific safety improvements staff can look at either in-house or through outside consultants about this intersection? Are you willing to make that commitment?
Yes, Councillor, I am, and I think we'll get innovative if you want to engage the community. Also, in a preliminary discussion, we'll bring in an external traffic safety consultant, and maybe we just do some focus group or some listening into the community concerns, and we can look for some short, medium, and longer term fixes.
Thank you for that. So, Mr. Mayor and colleagues, I have significant concerns with this, not necessarily the planning application per se, but with respect to how we continue to improve planning applications. And I don't feel the transportation network keeps pace. We have DCs for a reason. They are supposed to pay for the expanded demands that the city needs through the infrastructure. I've not solely focused my comments to date on roads, although the road network has not kept pace as we expand, particularly to the south. And that's why I think we need to take a stand. So I'm not particularly focused on one particular development. We recently had discussions in this room about a Claridge proposal further east on Hunt Club by the Airport Parkway, where there was really no adequate way in my way to get in there and get out, and the gridlock. And again, the developer said, not my problem, this is the city's problem, and the city needs to deal with traffic. But that's why I'm not supporting this. I spoke against this at committee, and I'm again speaking against this today, and I would encourage others to do the same. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Meehan, questions and comments?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I have the ward south of River Ward, Riverside South, and I have to say that Riverside and Hunt Club is, and this is according to city staff, one of the worst intersections in the city. The most collisions. It's a bottleneck at the best of times. And for those of you who haven't traveled through this intersection, let me just paint you a picture. We're talking about 2 lanes of traffic heading north in the morning, kilometers long, right back to River Road onto Limebank in the morning, heading south. In the evening, heading north in the morning. Heading south in the evening, it's the same thing, kilometers long. It's nonstop traffic east-west on Hunt Club. My concern is this is one of 3 arteries into the downtown that people in Riverside South and south of me, Councillor DeRuza's ward, Councillor Moffat's ward, use every day. And we use it, we're forced to use it because we do not have transit. There are no dedicated bus lanes on any of the north-south arterials going into the city. So we are forced to take cars and vehicles. I think it's wonderful that we can't wait for the LRT to come, and yes, we will have the Greenboro station where some of the people will go, but quite frankly, the volume of traffic going through that intersection will not be diminished significantly. So I am not opposed to the Taggart development. What I am opposed to, though, is any development at this time in this section of the city. This intersection cannot take it. When people were told that there was a probability of a development going in on that corner, they were just gobsmacked. It's an hour going in the morning. During winter weather, it's an hour and a half, and it's only going to get worse because we continue to grow in the south end. So I would like to know, at what point do we as a city start taking the residents' concerns more seriously? We need an overarching transportation plan that puts rapid buses on these routes so we can decrease the volume of traffic. By approving this application, we're only going to make the problem worse. So this intersection, I cannot support this development because we don't need it at this time. What is needed for us as a council is to fulfill our obligations and allocate funds to improve the Hunt Club Riverside intersection to address the current and the future volume of traffic before any other development approvals are green-lighted in the city. People are asking, when do their concerns, when does their quality of life get priority with us? And I think it's a fair question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much. My question is about transit, because this is on a transit route, but there's definitely going to be more cars, and I'm wondering how are we going to deal with it in terms of bringing in even more transit, getting more people on buses so that we don't have these gridlock problems. I feel concerned about when we keep talking about the traffic. What are we doing to go against that, to increase people using transit for such a big development?
So, Mr. Mayor, I think it's important to recognize we have this same problem in every major arterial road heading into the city, whether it's Bronson, Innis, Carling, Prince of Wales, Woodruff, Greenbank. This exists. And I urge council to understand the bigger picture that we're looking at the network connectivity and how things actually work on a network level. And the network is a very dynamic thing. And we have new technology, perhaps, that will help us use our networks more effectively. And that's what Mr. Manconi talked about. As it relates to council's previous decisions in the last 2 official plans and transportation master plans, council has prioritized adding new capacity to the downtown through public transit. You just voted to start construction of the Trillium line to the south, which will be the biggest single reliever of congestion to the south in the history of the city. Because those arteries that have been built so far, lane widenings haven't accomplished that level of congestion relief. And there are other parts of the city that don't even have lane widenings in plans at this stage of the game. So council has put its effort and priority for financial reasons, for environmental sustainability reasons, and for smart growth reasons on transportation through public transit. And council has made that. What we have right now is a bit of a lag that we will have time before that is actually built, but ground's going to break shortly on that. So again, you cannot make decisions like this, council. I urge you certainly can make any decision you wish, but I urge you not to make decisions that would be the same problem as whether you go east, west, or south in this city, to think that stalling urban growth intensification would actually alleviate the problem, because all you do is move that problem to another location in the city, further out, adding more congestion traffic to the exact same corridors further out, causing more vehicle kilometers to be traveled throughout the whole city, which is a negative environmental and financial consequence.
So I take it that you're saying that you're going to plan this to be a major intersection for transit?
Mr. Scrimgeour isn't here, but the single biggest transportation improvement is in this direction is the creation of the Trillium line, and then the restringing of the bus system in and around the entire Trillium line at the closer to the time of construction will do that. Plus the annual adjustments public OC Transpo makes to transit service.
Well, that's what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear how you're tackling it in terms of if there's going to be this extra population, and I wanted to hear what the plans were.
Mr. Mayor, like we do in every development, we'll look at what the ridership is and we'll adjust the routes accordingly. There is a strong movement afoot between the 2 departments to get developers to embrace transit as development occurs. I know Councillor Harder and I have talked about it, the chicken and egg discussion about do you add the routes once the ridership is there, or do you entice the riders before that? We've done some innovative things in her ward and some other areas. We continually talk to people and developers about on high density developments how they could do UPass programs to entice people to do that. We've had condo developers willingly on their own give free Presto passes for a year and so forth. We will need the ridership to justify routes, and when I hear dedicated routes and things like that, you need a lot of ridership to do that. But if the ridership is there, we'll certainly adjust accordingly. And the north-south movement in your transportation master plan, official plan, is the focus on getting that capacity. There's no dispute with staff that the intersection is at capacity. It's full, and you could add as many lanes as you want. You'll continue to attract the traffic. You need that multi-billion investment that you've done in transit to get those people that want to head north. And by the way, beat the car every single day, even on good weather days, to get downtown once that line is fully operational.
So my question is were conversations, did conversations take place in terms of the developer with this development on making transit part of it?
So, Councillor, in every development review process, one of the OC Transpo is circulated on all applications, and they look for every opportunity, whether it be lay-by areas, certain intersection configurations, to make sure that we're not impeding bus service, and they also build up their data inventory of the new populations coming in to do their route service planning as they go. So they're part of the development review process, and the 2 departments work very closely together on that.
Okay, because in the written statement, all I saw was talking about a multi-use path, and that's great, and that, but I didn't see any mention of transit in terms of, you know, that we're working towards possible route changes or increases, like something that gave me an indication that you spoke to the developer and that was part of the plan, because all I'm hearing about is more traffic lanes.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just add that a lot of that comes at the site plan conversations when the application becomes more of a reality. Right now we're at the zoning stage. So I think, we you know, as Mr. Willis points out, those conversations will take place, but certainly it'll get a little bit more serious about what's required when we get to the site plan.
Okay, I think it would be helpful if we saw that earlier, that this conversation will take place in terms of transit, because everything is about the traffic problems. And I think people, you know, council needs confidence that that has been thought through. So thank you.
So Mr. Mayor, Mr. Manconi and I just discussed, the councillor makes a valid point. We're going to review with staff the degree to which those transit type comments are making their ways into reports. That's a valid point.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Councillor. And I think it was important what Mr. Willis said in terms of the investment in the Trillium line. This is one of the few times, if the only time that I can think of, where we've actually are putting in the capacity for transit before the whole area is built out, and we end up, you know, with a situation where it becomes much more convenient for people to take the O-Train Trillium line to come downtown, and that is going to have a significant positive impact. It's not going to solve all the problems of that intersection, but I think it's a good example of where we invest in transit and we get the lines built before all of the build-out takes place, so that we try to avoid some of these problems in the future. Councillor Menard, please.
Thanks very much, Mayor. I think this is, I appreciate the discussion by Mr. Willis and Mr. Manconi. I think you've nailed it, right? It is standard sort of chicken and egg piece, and we are having these problems all over the city. What's clear is more sort of car-centric planning is not going to solve our problems anywhere. That's not going to fix what's going on in the city. And, you know, where I am, Riverside Drive feeds to Bronson, feeds to Bank, Main, making this intersection busier. It's going to have effects on Alta Vista, Capitol Ward, Somerset wards. There's going to be an effect there. We often talk about, you know, some narrowing of roads in Capitol Ward and how that may affect sort of suburban drivers. I think the opposite is the case here, and it's important that we recognize that. I think if there's any time to start thinking about development-oriented transit. We talk a lot about transit-oriented development. If there's any time to start thinking about it, it's now. Granted, the LRT will help with this, but I don't think that's going to really solve the problem of that intersection. And so I guess my question is, is there a comprehensive sort of transit plan for that suburban area of the city? Is there something more that we're doing besides that LRT piece, besides the 2031, I understand, widening of a road for a transit or only lane? Are there other plans there to increase capacity at all with more transit capacity there?
We have our normal operational reviews that we do, and the transportation master plan outlines where your investments on transit in general, both bus and rail. I know we talk about rail all over the place, but you've made a lot of investments this term and previous term of council on bus lanes and queue signals and so forth, and we will continue to do that because the funding exists. There's BRT studies that were approved and BRT preliminary engineering works that are approved and so forth. So there are, your short answer is yes, they're embedded in your transportation master plan. You just approved the budget, and there's a long list of initiatives in there to do exactly what you're talking about citywide.
Okay, ask Councillor Menard's mic be put back on, please.
Thanks very much. I appreciate that, and I think this is because I'm not so much opposed to the development. It could be worse, so I'm hearing the development could be worse there, but it's more about how we're going to get this right from a holistic citywide perspective, not so much about this particular one. And so I want to continue having that conversation with folks and see if we can't, because I know, LRT to some extent will help some areas of the city, but other areas are being left out from that as well. We need to think about those areas that kind of cut through where stage 1 and stage 2 are proposed to go. And obviously the bus transit service that we've got connecting those areas, we're hoping to see improvement once this starts. But these are the types of things that I think this discussion has provided us an opportunity to speak about this as a council that we don't always get, but this is the perfect opportunity to do that. So thanks for those answers. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Councillor Gower, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quick comment. First of all, I want to thank Councillor Brockington for raising this, because it's an issue that I hear about all the time from residents around this disconnect between the planning and the transportation. I think we're at a phase right now. I know there are future plans for the transportation network, transit and roads, but I think residents recognize, as well as we all do in the room, that the timeline is out of sync right now. And at some point, I think we are going to have to say no, or at least not yet. In fact, we have. I remember several years back in Councillor Hubley's ward in Bridlewood, development was put on hold because the necessary transportation infrastructure was not in place yet, and we defended that at the OMB. I don't think that's the case here, but I think there are other spots in our city where we may have to do that again and say, look, we need to wait a few years because the planned transportation network won't be in place for a while. So we're close to that point, and I don't think this particular development and discussion is one where we need to say no or hold now, but I think it does highlight how important it is in this term of council that we get things like the official plan, the transportation master plan, the development charges right, so we can get back in phase in terms of our planning and transportation planning. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good points, thank you. Councillor Blais, please.
Thanks very much, Mr. Mayor. Can you remind us how many units we're talking about at this location?
It depends on what proceeds to the site plan level. There could be a seniors project, there could be residential. We're not talking about a significant number of residential units at this point, although the zoning would permit that. So it really depends on the application that will come forward. As I mentioned earlier, right now, based on their current concept, it's about 25% of the previous proposal for an office retail complex from about 2001. So significantly less.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, I have no problem with the discussion around ensuring that roads and transit and other infrastructure keeps pace with development. What I guess I'm a little bit concerned about is the inconsistency in that approach. On the 28th of February at Planning Committee, committee approved, I believe unanimously, something like 2,000 new building units in Riverside South. It was then approved unanimously, I think, at Council 2 weeks later. I'm looking up the committee reports, and the councillors' comments are, I'm aware of the proposal, not I'm against the proposal, not the sky's going to fall if we allow 2,000 building units to be built in Riverside South and it's going to cause traffic nightmares, etc. It's I'm aware of it. So I would encourage everyone to support this. It's a lot closer to the city than Riverside South is. It's a lot closer to existing transit than Riverside South is, and it's a lot more dense than the 2,000 some odd single-family home building units proposed in Riverside South and approved unanimously by Council a month ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Deans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, having been a frequent user of that intersection for the past 15 years, I can certainly attest to the point that Councillor Brockington has been making about peak hour congestion at that intersection and backups to certainly Walkley Road on a daily basis. So when it gets a grade of F- as an intersection, one can certainly understand why, especially given that when you really consider the geography of the area, there is a big honkin' airport that you have to get around, and there's also a river and a bridge. And so when you consider north-south routes on the east side of the Rideau River, because of that airport, there are very few north-south routes. And you know, if we all remember back to the early 2000s, it was the north-south LRT, electrified light rapid transit, 29 kilometers of track from Barrhaven to Ottawa U that was supposed to be built and up and running, and by the way, under $1 billion. And that didn't happen. And that was the kind of light rapid transit system that we needed to serve the fastest growing urban areas in the city of Ottawa, and that was canceled. That didn't happen. And now, you know, I hear the stock that is being put in the Trillium line, and certainly it's an improvement, but let's not forget, it's not double-tracked the whole way. That track still has to go under, a waterway, so it goes down to one track. It's, what is it, Mr. Manconi, 12-minute service or 15-minute service?
I like to characterize it as very good service. Yes, it's about 12 minutes.
12-minute service. So it's not what was originally intended in terms of trying to get people out of the cars and onto public transit, because frankly, it has to be faster and more convenient and everything else for people to use it. And I'm concerned about the level of service with not having that twin track the entire way from the south and what impact that's actually going to have happen. The best argument that I've heard for approving this development is that the as-of-right zoning could make it worse. But it's not a great argument because, you know, to the councillor's point about when do you say no, he said, well, we're not there yet. Well, F-, I don't know how much worse you can get than F-. And I have to say the one real thing that bugs me about this application is that car dealership, because that just sort of smacks of saying that cars are fine and it can be accommodated there, and it really doesn't feel like it can be accommodated, those uses at that corner. And I just think that there has to be better planning than this before we approve an application like that. And I really think the daily users of that intersection, the 60,000 car movements through there, are going to be saying, like, what were they thinking approving that? And then the one thing I'm really concerned about is this motion, because I heard what you said, Mr. Willis, but I also had some staff in my office yesterday to talk about this, and I asked them if it was normal, traditional, to actually have a motion like this at zoning, or if this would not actually be something that would be negotiated and the staff would have an opportunity to talk how much of that is the overall network improvement, how much is attributable to this development, and some sort of a negotiation that would happen as part of site plan. And it feels to me that this is preempting that discussion that we should rightfully have, and that it's premature at zoning. So could you just comment on that?
So, Mr. Mayor, first of all, the councilor's right. Normally, we would deal with this at site plan, but we've tried to listen to the concerns that were raised through committee, through the community, raised on what would be the transportation improvements in this area. So when we wouldn't normally identify that lane improvement till site plan, but we did it at zoning because of the concerns raised by Councillor Brockington, who has some very legitimate concerns about what this does. So now that we've identified that we need this, earlier than we normally would, we have to get into that discussion of how we pay for it, which is a discussion we would normally do at site plan. So you're quite right, we normally would do it that then, but because we did this to address the concerns now, we're having the same conversation we would have then now. And it does go down to...
We're not having the conversation. We're saying we're going to pay for it through development charges. We're not having that conversation about, are they going to make a contribution to it?
So, Mr. Mayor, as Ms. Snedden explained, they are making contributions. They are required to make contributions to a number of elements, including the intersection lights, all of the reconfiguration of that, the sidewalks, and the light. The improvement for the right turn lane is not to alleviate things created by their development. It's to ameliorate the broader network problems that exist today. They could make the case that their development does not create the need for that lane. We've asked for it because while they're constructing and digging up that entire area, we can get that improvement now rather than waiting till we have money in our own capital budgets down the road to do something like this. So it's opportunistic for us to get them to do that right now. And because it's not attributable to their development in its entirety, they are not obligated under the Planning Act and would have a strong basis for appeal of any requirement we would put on that. But we have development charges money that we do raise for improvements just like this, so it's not on the tax dollars, it's the development community more broadly is paying for that, so that's why we've chosen that route.
But, I mean, you chose it 100%, and I mean, what I listened carefully to what you said it's not attributable to that development in its entirety, but certainly in some portion it would be. And that's why we often have that, negotiation, because development charges are not endless either. There's only so much, and there's a lot more plans for development charges than we have money for. We have intersections. We fund one traffic intersection a year currently because we don't have enough development charges. So if we, don't even have the conversation with fairly large proponents that are contributing to the congestion, then when are we going to have the conversation? So I guess that's my big concern.
Thank you. So on Councillor Harder and Tierney's motion, carried. Dissent by Brockington and Deans. On the motion as amended. And Meehan and Menard. And on the motion as amended. Carried, and the same dissents? Okay, thank you. All right. Councillor McKenney, if you'd like to move the motion, please, to adopt report, seconded by Councillor Suds.
Sure would. That Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee Report 3, Finance and Economic Development Committee Report 3, Planning Committee Report 4, Transportation Committee Report 2, and the report from the City Clerk and Solicitor entitled Summary of Oral and Written Public Submissions for Items Subject to the Planning Act Explanation Requirements at the City Council meeting of March 27, 2019 be received and adopted as amended.
Adopté, carried. A motion of which notice has been previously given by Councillor Menard. The matter is now redundant because it's been dealt with by the audit committee. It'll come to committee at council next meeting. Motions requiring suspension of the rules of procedure. Councillor Eli L. Shantiri, signed by Councillor Suds, on a mural. It's time sensitive. On suspension, carried. Councillor L. Shantiri, would like to introduce your motion, signed by Councillor Suds.
Thank you, Your Worship. And as you heard earlier, Mr. Mayor, staff are trying to develop a policy about this. This is just an old building on Main Street in the village of Carp, and the BIA is going to place a mirror. It's going to really bring a nice addition to the Main Street of Carp. So it's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Suds. Therefore, be resolved that Council approve an exemption to Section 143, subsection 2 of the permanent signs on private property bylaw 2016-326 as amended to permit a mural on exterior wall contained to the main entrance to the building that is north wall of 405 Donald B. Monroe Drive.
This isn't the mural with your picture on it, is it?
No, that's another one.
It's very good. It's a very good mural. On the motion? What did he say? On the motion, carried, adopté. Notice of motion for consideration at subsequent meeting. Avis de motion pour examiner en réunion subséquente. Councillor Brockington, please, seconded by Councillor Harder.
Thank you, Your Worship. Notice is hereby provided for the next meeting. It's regarding the Planning, Infrastructure, and Economic Development Year-End Report, seeking additional information on pre-consult and UDRP data. I won't read through it all. I'll just read the therefore clause. Therefore, be it resolved that in this case, the Planning Department include in the 2019 year-end report and each subsequent year the number of pre-consults held, the number of those that resulted in application within a year, and the number of files that were reviewed by the UDRP. This is just to provide greater scope and data in the year-end report, and we'll debate it at the next council meeting.
Great, thank you very much. The next notice of motion is by Councillor Fleury, seconded by Councillor Luloff, on National Health and Fitness Day.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. C'est une motion
Thank you. It's the usual motion. Je peux la lire.
Canadians engaging in healthy physical activities has declined, while inactivity and obesity continues to rise in Canada. Whereas health, physical activity, and fitness ought to be promoted and embraced by Canadians of all ages and abilities, whereas many Canadian cities have taken up the challenge of encouraging and promoting physical activity, including Calgary, Saskatoon, Montreal, and Victoria, and also the City of Ottawa over the last few years. And whereas the City of Ottawa promotes active and healthy living through a number of initiatives, including ongoing Try It campaign for city fitness membership programs, a series of I Love 2 programs to promote swimming, skating, soccer, and other sports. And whereas the City of Ottawa, Department of Ottawa Public Health, Recreation, Culture, and facility services departments and others work together on improving the access to physical activity for all residents, whereas the Recreation, Culture, and Facility Services Department offers a multitude of recreation and leisure programming to promote health, physical activity, and fitness, whereas offering a small incentive to residents to embrace physical activity and fitness by providing a 2-for-1 swimming, public swimming for all 20 city-operated pools and 2-for-1 at all 17 city-operated weight and cardio rooms in recognition of the 2019 National Health and Fitness Day would cost the city an estimated $1,400 in foregone revenues, which staff has advised can be absorbed within existing budget. Therefore, be it resolved that City Council declare Saturday, June 1st, 2019, the National Health and Fitness Day in Ottawa. Be it further resolved that City Council approve that the city offer 2-for-1 public swimming at all 20 city-operated swimming pools and 2-for-1 admission to all 17 city-operated weight and cardio rooms on Saturday, June 1st, 2019, in recognition of National Health and Fitness Day.
Are we required to take a fitness test, Councillor?
No test.
Good. Okay. Motion to introduce reports or introduce bylaws. Motion portant présentation de règlement. Councillor McKenney and Suds, please.
That the bylaws listed on the agenda under motion to introduce bylaws, first and second reading, be read, and that the bylaws listed on the agenda under motion to introduce bylaws, 3 readings, be read and passed.
The motion carried.
Carried.
Confirmation bylaw, règlement de ratification, conseillère McKenney et Suds.
That the following bylaw be read and passed to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting of April 10th, 2019.
Carried. Councillor Leeper has a written inquiry.
Thank you, Chair. I have an inquiry which has also been brought by Councillors McKenney and Menard with respect to advertisement on OC Transpo buses. Advertisements for Action Life have recently been purchased on OC Transpo buses that invite pregnant women to call for help. It has been asserted that Action Life is not a pregnancy counseling agency. The Canadian advertising standards do not allow for misleading advertising. In light of the late 2018 court ruling involving the City of Hamilton and bus shelter ads, would staff provide a current status of the law on such advertising, including any charter arguments, and explain what options and/or processes may be available to OC Transpo and the City with respect to any concern raised by these ads?
All right, so that's directed to the City Clerk and Solicitor. Thank you to members of Council and staff who have worn pink today. This is National Pink Shirt Day, anti-bullying initiative. We appreciate that. And also, our thoughts are with the family of the late Dr. Senator Wilbert Keon. I think most of us probably had the great honor to meet him over our time, whether it was the Heart Institute telethon or different work he did in the community. He was really a pioneer heart surgeon, the first open heart surgery, heart replacement taking place under his watch. And he was really the founder of the Heart Institute that has literally saved so many lives. So on behalf of all members of council and the entire city, we wish the very best during this difficult time to his wife Anne and their children. And our thoughts and prayers are with him. I'm going to have the honor of representing the city at the funeral tomorrow morning. Adjournment, Councillor McKenney and Suds, please.
That the proceedings of the City Council meeting of April 10th, 2019 be adjourned.
On the motion, carried, adopté, meeting adjourned.